Welcome back to another episode of We Don't Know What to Watch, the podcast where two guys watch random movies and talk about them. And with me today, as always, is the amazing, the incredible, the Elaine Carmichael to my Elle Woods, Kyle Mulford, and I'm Noah Saturn. How you doing, Kyle?
Just bend and snap.
You mean like it's hard?
I'm doing good. Today's episode is brought to you by the Confederate Army. Because like the South, we will rise again, Noah.
And the glass blowing.
And the glass and the deep South glass. What are we watching if people haven't figured it out by now? Because
we
love the South, I guess.
The 2002 classic Sweet Home Alabama, starring Reese Witherspoon, Josh Lucas, Patrick Dempsey, and others.
Candice Bergen, Mary Kay Place, Fred Ward, Gene Smart, Ethan Embry, Melanie Linsky, Kevin Sussman, and a brief cameo by a 7-year-old Dakota Fanning having her first kiss in her life on screen in Sweet Home Alabama.
Yeah, that was the first note I wrote was Fanning.
Yeah, she came on screen. I'm like, is that Dakota Fanning? Well, this must be like one of her first movies. Yeah, Sweet Home Alabama. Alabama. What do we got? What's your snowball pitch, if you will?
Well, successful fashion designer Elaine Carmichael has everything. She's got a wonderful boyfriend, a great job, and she just had her first fashion show. What happens is she's now engaged to her perfect boyfriend, and turns out she's still married to her old husband back home in Alabama.
I got to stop you right there. It's Melanie Carmichael.
Melanie, Elaine. Who's Elaine then? I don't know.
I don't know, because Melanie, remember, it rhymes with felony.
Right.
Yeah, so she's engaged to McDreamy, and so we start out, a 7 and 10-year-old boy and girl walking on the beach in Alabama, and they're looking at like a spot that lightning had struck, and they're out in a rainstorm. Like, who are these kids' parents? On a beach, and they both get struck by lightning.
So do you think the rest of this movie is a Jacob's Ladder situation?
It never really happened. It's all in there.
It's all in her head. That she's dying on the beach after she was electrocuted.
Yes. So then we cut to many, many years later, and we've got Melanie Carmichael is a fashion designer. She's a big up and comer, and she's got a show coming up, and her boyfriend McDreamy, Patrick Dempsey, is he's the mayor's son, the mayor of New York, played by Candice Bergen, played greatly by Candice Bergen. I love Candice Bergen.
She's great. She's a real heel in a great sort of way.
Yes, and so he decides, he's wealthy, so he decides to trick Melanie going through this back door, like to this building, and then they walk in and they're in Tiffany's, and he's like, pick a ring. And that was actually shot in Tiffany's.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. Another interesting tidbit is this is the first movie, like there's portions shot in New York, and this is the first movie to shoot in New York after 9/11.
Man, that's got to be a weird shoot.
Yeah. So like they shot, because this is a 2002 film, so they shot some of the stuff in the fall of 2001 after 9/11. So
man, that's got to be just surreal.
Yeah. But so she's all freaking out because she's like, "Oh crap! Oh, do you really want to marry me? Oh shoot!" And then she goes, "I got to go back home and tell my parents, but I just want to go before you meet them. I want to go down and tell them." And then she goes down to Alabama, and then she actually goes to see her husband. Oh my! What? Played by Josh Lucas, and then she meets all the weird characters in the town, and she's kind of not a great person in this. And I think this movie is mostly about her coming to terms with where she came from, and learning to accept that, and remembering her roots and stuff.
Yeah, because she was the one who got out, so to speak. She left the small town, She made it. She did the big thing she always wanted to do. And then some of her friends are still there. Some of her old friends from high school now have like 4 or 5 kids or something.
Yeah, and the thing I actually kind of liked about this movie was you don't know who she's going to end up with at the end because both guys are actually really great guys. She's the one who has problems with lying and stuff, but she gets better, so you like her by the end of the movie. And then you're like, well, wait a minute, you're going to break one of these guys' hearts because they're actually both great guys.
Yeah, I was surprised that of how they both ultimately will duke him off pretty well. Because typically, if you're doing this the Hallmark way, and it did feel kind of Hallmarky in the fact that she has to go back to her small town,
Yeah.
is the fact that, both of the guys are both actually really nice. Because normally one would be an obvious jerk.
Yeah, and that's the way every other romantic comedy is. There's always two guys, and one does at least one thing that you're like, okay, I'm okay with you getting rid of him. And this one, I'm going, oh well, Patrick Dempsey, he's McDreamy, and he has done absolutely nothing wrong, and he actually adores her in this movie. It's like, and really wants to marry her, and it's like, well, shoot. And then you got Josh Lucas, who the reason she left is you find out through, they never specifically say, they just drop little bits and pieces for you to piece together that essentially she got knocked up by Josh Lucas after a football game, and then she got pregnant, and then it sounds like she must have had either a stillbirth or a miscarriage, and then she was like, shit, I got to get out of here now that this happened, and she just left, and and didn't just kind of left Josh Lucas, and so when she comes back, she's like, and then the whole time she's gone, she can't get him to sign the divorce papers. And then you kind of find out why. It's because he's like, well, no, I tried to visit you in New York. I saw you were successful. So I was like, I need to be a better man. So I came back here and tried to be better. And like, you're like, oh, I kind of get it. I kind of get why you didn't sign those papers.
And he's got a cute dog.
He does. The dog's awesome. Big old floppy-eared dog.
Yeah, I think it was a bloodhound.
Yes, yeah, that's what it looked like. It was a bloodhound that dives to the bottom of the creek to get a bone. And a lot of these little things, I listened to the whole audio commentary from the director on this, and it was kind of interesting because a lot of stuff he put in this movie was stuff he actually heard stories about. Like, he knew a guy who had a dog that would actually dive to the bottom of their pool to get stuff. And so he like put that in, like, oh, I'm going to have a dog dive down here. And, and I love when he dives into the water and she's like, could he swim? And Josh Lucas is like, well, doesn't seem like it too much, does it? Because he's still under the water, just nonchalantly. And then all of a sudden you see which he pointed out in the commentary was a puppet head pop up out of the water. But yeah, that was interesting. But then there's this whole recurring story about a cat also.
Yeah, so there's some good lines in here. One line I wrote down in particular was Josh Lucas calls Reese Witherspoon a hoity-toity Yankee bitch.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. There's some good stuff in there with that. But this cat thing where they call Melanie Felony Melanie in town because apparently there was a cat that was going to be put to sleep because it was, getting sick and was not on the mend. And they were like, well, instead of just doing that, we're going to give it a quick end. And they tied dynamite to it and put a really long fuse. And then the cat shot off and they're like, oh crap. And so they just went and got ice cream.
The cat goes into a bank.
Yeah.
And then the bank blows up. So Melanie blew up the bank when she was a teenager.
Yeah. And the thing is the director was saying that he actually heard this from like his grandfather or something like that, heard this story from the old actor Andy Devine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So this was an actual story that was passed down that he heard like 20 years ago and wanted to put it in a movie.
That's amazing.
So that was like a real story from someone in Hollywood. So, but yeah, we've got a lot of great characters. Like I said, Candice Bergen played the mayor, who was also McDreamy's mom and since she's the mayor, she's like, I don't think she's good enough for you. So let's find out about her. And she's got to be hiding some skeletons in her closet. And then you got Ethan Embry, who's the town gay. And at one point, Melanie gets all pissed off at Jake, Josh Lucas, and goes into the bar, gets trashed, and just starts bashing everybody, and outs Ethan Embry as gay, and then they're like, "You drank too much, get out of here." So, but I liked Ethan Embry in this movie. I like him when he pops up and stuff.
Yeah, it was also fun when Jean Smart showed up as well.
She's amazing. She's an amazing actress and needs to be in more things. Yes. I loved her character too, because she's just like, she's Jake's mom and she's still like, oh, hey, it's Melanie. Like, hey, come on in and have a drink and whatever. And then at the end of the movie, she's like, goes to her son, is like, you're an idiot. Go tell Melanie how you still feel. Just like, she's so great in this movie. That's the thing about this movie is it may be, kind of a typical romantic comedy type thing, but the characters and the actors do so much. The actors do so much with the characters that like you just really like some of the characters.
Yeah, it does feel elevated. Like it does kind of elevate the material.
Yeah, and I love Fred Ward and Mary Kay Place as her parents, Earl and Pearl. and Earl is all talking about how the South is going to rise again, and it's so terrible because like, no, we don't want the South to rise again, but like it's just like this southern dude, like he's actually just like this nice sweet old man, but like he's got this issue of the South rising again, so like he does a
good old boy.
Yeah, he does the reenactments and stuff. He's one of them that gets to surrender at the reenactment.
Yeah, there's a great scene where she has to go find her dad in the middle of this like reenactment scene, so then she goes up to one of the dead Confederate soldiers and say, hey, I'm looking for this person. Earl Smooter. It's like, all right, Earl Smooter. Like the whole like battalion gets up to talk to her. It's like, oh, he's that way. He's going to surrender. It's like, thank you. And then they all die again.
Just follow. And those were all reenactment people, because a lot of the footage was actually, they filmed an actual reenactment down in the South. So
makes sense. Yeah, use local actors there. So they're
so I thought that was kind of cool, and yeah, that was a great scene because even the director was like, "This got a big laugh, and we really wanted to put this in." And all the reenactment people just got a kick out of this scene too, doing it and everything. I was like, that was a really great moment.
Yes.
So, and then you got the old man like shooting the anvils in the air,
yeah,
which is apparently something that actually happened during the Civil War.
Huh.
Because I wasn't totally understanding what he was talking about. It was like something trying to like, they were trying to get rid of the other side's anvils, but like they're made out of cast iron, so like they couldn't destroy them, so they would just shoot them off. I'm like, what? Don't even get it. But yeah, so
I like that scene, but the whole thing, like, oof, yeah. That part aged a little poorly to me.
With the
whole thing about the Confederate still being like a Confederate guy, and then just
it's kind of hard to watch like people actually saying, yeah, the South will rise again and all stuff. I'm like, oh, no, we don't want
the Confederate flag pillows they have in the house.
Yeah. So yeah, that's I found it amusing enough though that like it was there were some funny bits in it, like we said, with like all of the dead Confederates like raising up and going, oh, he's over there surrendering, that. So there's some funny scenes with it, but like, yeah, it is kind of hard to watch like all this Confederacy stuff. You're like, do you really want to go back home again, Melanie?
Yeah, it's played off as like, it's those goofy Southerners.
Yeah. So, yeah, I agree that it doesn't age real well, but there's enough funny, playful moments in it.
Yeah, the dead Confederate scene almost reminded me of, I'm not sure if it was intended, but it felt like a parody of that very famous shot from Gone with the Wind, where she's walking along and seeing all these dead soldiers, and the camera kind of like pans out to see just how many dead Confederates there are in this one place. Because it felt like almost a certain similar camera movement, and then they all get up and talk, which is funny.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of camera movements, the director of this is a guy named Andy Tennant, and he's done movies like Hitch, Fool's Gold, The Bounty Hunter, the one with what with Jennifer Aniston and Gerard Butler. So he does these kind of romantic comedy type things, and Hitch is actually a good movie. But during the commentary, there was a point where you remember when she's like, "Oh, he won't sign the papers, so hey, we've got a joint checking account. I'm going to spend all his money." And so she says that, and he's in the middle of swigging a Bud Light, and then they show a camera view from straight above him looking down the can at his eyes, like bugging out. And during the commentary, the director was like, "There's my Parker Lewis shot." And I was like, "Oh, that does look like a shot you'd see in Parker Lewis Can't Lose." Well, I went and looked up. He actually directed 4 episodes of Parker Lewis Can't Lose.
Nice.
I was like, I used to watch Parker Lewis Can't Lose. I loved that show. That was kind of fun. But yeah, this was just overall just kind of a cute movie, and at the end you get him going out, and they're back in the lightning storm again, and I was like, you find out that he started this glass blowing place, and then that's what he was doing to try and become better, more successful, and all that stuff. And then she finds out about it, and so when she ends up not getting married, she runs to him, and she knows where he's at because he's going to be on the beach because there's a storm coming in, and he's putting out like metal rods on the beach while the lightning is striking in the distance. I'm going, you couldn't do this before a storm came?
This man has no fear.
He has no fear. So but it was all like recreating, because there was a line at the beginning, the young Melanie was like, "Well, why do you want to go and marry a girl like me?" Because the 10-year-old's like, "I want to marry you." And he's like, "So I can kiss you anytime I want." And I'm like, this is a 10 and a 7-year-old. This is kind of weird. But then they rehash the line at the end, and she goes out and she's like, "I'm still married to you." And he goes, "Well, why do you want to do that?" "So I can kiss you anytime I want." And then they go back to the reception and everyone parties.
Yep. And then we see that at the very end, we see that the cat that they talked about did survive. And then now, like a cat with a singed tail, has started licking their wedding cake.
Yes, that was interesting. I did watch an alternate ending for this. It was the original ending for this movie, and it did not do well with audiences, but I can see why, because when she goes out to the beach to find him and that lightning's going and they're in the middle of all those rods, well, they end up getting struck by lightning again because they were going with the whole lightning never strikes twice in the same place. Well, then it did, because it hit them again as adults. And then it cuts to going to the reception, and he walks in with her limp in his arms, and everybody's all shocked, and he walks and he walks and he walks, and she's just laying there lifeless. And then he gets to the middle of the room and he goes, "Melanie Carmichael is dead. Long live Felony Melanie." And she pops out of his arms. It's like, what? That's a terrible prank.
I can understand why it didn't do well, but that's also kind of awesome. I can understand why it was shot.
Because the crowd was just like, "That's not funny." So he's like, "So we reshot and changed the ending." And I like the ending. It's fine. They all go back to Stella's Roadhouse, which Stella is Jake's mom, played by Jean Smart. So she's the one who owns the bar, the Roadhouse, and
the Double Deuce.
The Double Deuce. But again, Jean Smart, one of the all-stars of this movie, even though she's in it probably less than a lot of the other characters.
Yeah, she doesn't have a lot of screen time, but she's still very memorable.
Yeah.
I wish
Candice Bergen coming into town was great too.
Yes, and how she gets punched by Reese Witherspoon.
Well, because she tells off Reese Witherspoon's mom, "Why don't you go back to your double wide and fry something?" I liked when she's like grooming her son to become president, and when they're like arguing back in New York, and he's going, "Do you have something against poor people?" She goes, "No, poor people who get me elected." Because he's like, "You're supposed to be a Democrat." There's nothing wrong with being poor. Poor people get me elected.
Mm-hmm.
I like that she was kind of a snotty politician, but like this son was still like, "Nope, I'm just a good guy."
Yep.
So yeah, I don't know if I have much else to say about it.
This is actually one of my mom's favorite movies, and we watched it together, and we had a good time.
Oh, good. Yeah, this is Carrie Ann really likes this movie too. I did not watch this with her, but I think she's seen it several times, and she even admits, she goes, "That's not like any sort of Oscar contender or anything. It's not supposed to be. It's just a fun movie," and I kind of agree. Before we go into whether we like it and whether we recommend, we have to do Chekhov's Chekhov. We missed that last week.
That's true.
And
I forgot.
last week was Midsommar, which basically is completely chock full of, runes here that come back later and this and that. And there's a lot of Chekhovs in that. But this one, I think you have the Chekhov's cat, because that thing just keeps coming back, like that story keeps coming back in like it's got 9 lives. And then you got Chekhov's lightning storm.
Chekhov's
because they get electrocuted at the end or in the beginning, but then it's kind of the catalyst for it comes back, because that's what he does to become a better man, is creating beautiful glass work from these lightning strikes. So they reuse that, and then of course the ending where she goes and finds him again in the lightning storm. So we got Chekhov's lightning. Would you recommend this movie?
Yeah, I think it's fine. I mean, I saw this. I mean, it's definitely good for a stream or a rental. It's one of those movies where you're flipping channels on TV. It's like, yeah, I'd watch it. It's fine enough. It's fun. It's sweet. It's harmless. It's not a bad way to spend a Saturday afternoon folding laundry or something.
Yeah, and it could have been really generic, but it pulls it off with the characters, and they're done really well, and the actors do a great job in this.
Yep, definitely.
I'm going to go with
the cast.
I've realized that I don't ever say skip it to many movies. So instead of just saying whether I'd recommend it or not, like I'm going to give it like a range of recommends. So my new range is going to be like skip it, stream it if you see it streaming, seek it out, like, put an effort in, like get it from the library or something, and then rent it, which is spend a little money, and then buy it. And that's the high end. I'm going to actually put this one on, especially if you like romantic comedies. I'm going to go a step above stream it and go to your local library if you can find this movie, if it's not streaming anywhere, and seek it out if you like these kind of movies, because the characters really do elevate this to better than it should even be. So
agreed. So now we move on to our next feature, which is, of course, is double features. So what would go well with this one? I think I'll go first. I'm going to pick an obvious choice. Reese Witherspoon goes well with Reese Witherspoon. So I made the joke earlier, and I think I'm going to go with Legally Blonde, because that movie is so much better than it has any right to be. And the musical that it was, then they adapted it into a musical, and that musical is a lot better than it has any right to be either.
Yeah, I have not seen the musical. My wife and kids have watched the musical. I think my wife has watched it several times. She loves it. I do love the movie though. So good. Yeah, that's a good recommendation. I was going kind of the same route, because I was like, I don't know if I could come up with any movies that like really are similarly themed to this one. So I was like, I agree. Reese Witherspoon goes well with Reese Witherspoon. She's so sweet, and I love her because she's got like a little bit of sass to her, but like she's so sweet and she's so cute. And there's another movie that I really enjoy, and I don't think that it gets talked about much, called Just Like Heaven, with Mark Ruffalo and Reese Witherspoon.
Yes, where Reese Witherspoon is a ghost.
Yes, she gets into an accident. She's a doctor who gets into a car accident, and then someone rents out her apartment like 3 months later, and then she's like, wait a minute, what are you doing in my apartment? And only he can see her, because it turns out she's in a coma, and this is like her spirit. And then they start forming a bond and yada yada, and
they play off each other really well.
They really do, and that's what works about it, because it's kind of a silly premise, but I really like Mark Ruffalo and Reese Witherspoon in this movie. And then John Heder is actually kind of funny as a bookstore owner who's like also like plays like a psychic kind of guy, like he likes paranormal stuff, and he's got a couple of funny lines in there too. So it's a really sweet movie, and I was kind of going with a sweet Sweet Home Alabama movie with a sweet Just Like Heaven movie, both starring Reese Witherspoon. So that'd be a good double feature.
Yep, definitely. So and now the next big question is, Kyle, what are we gonna watch next?
I don't know. Let's go to the big old wheel of fish, and
If
let's.
we land on UHF, I'd be so happy.
That'd be amazing. Let's spin it. Okay, we have an accomplished headhunter risks everything to obtain a valuable painting owned by a former mercenary.
What is Money Plane?
That'd be awesome. I don't think that's a 70 or better.
Oh, absolutely not. But it's got Kelsey Grammer.
Oh, speaking of 70 or better, Sweet Home Alabama is one of those that's like a huge disparaging thing between the critics and the regular, like, just
the audience,
watcher
yeah.
and the audience. Or it's a 39% critics and 78% with the audience. And
Harsh.
I have to say, I side with the audience more. No, this movie is called Headhunters. Imagine that. It's about an accomplished headhunter, and it's called Headhunters. It's a movie from Denmark, 2011, and it is on. Well, it is on Fubo TV, Hoopla, Canopy, Warriors Gangsters, Tubi, Pluto TV, Plex, Vudu, and the Roku channel. So you can find this.
So it's been a while since we had an international feature, so that's good.
Yeah, and I've actually heard of this one, and I've always wanted to see this one because I did hear this one was pretty good. So I think I heard that on a podcast somewhere. So this should be interesting. Like you said, haven't had an international feature for a while.
Also, one of these days, if it ever comes out on streaming, I really want to see RRR. Have you seen the trailers for that one?
No, I have not.
It is a Tollywood film, so in the Telugu language from southern India.
Okay.
And it is just like the most action movie. Like they fight tigers, they throw grenades, they do whatever they want. It's an Indian movie, so it's long, but also that means they've got dance numbers, they've got everything.
I'm gonna have to look for this trailer.
Oh yeah, it's something else.
Is it like RRR as in the letter R, the letter R, the letter R?
Yes.
All right, I'll look up that trailer.
Two of the biggest Indian action stars with like the biggest Indian action director. It's sort of one crazy movie.
Sweet. All right. Well, that being said, you can find us online. Not very actionable, but you can find me on Twitter at AwesomeKM.
And I'm at Noah_Saturn. That is spelled SATERN.
And we're on Instagram at We Don't Know What to Watch. And you can email us, we don't know what to watch at gmail.com. Like, subscribe, listen, comment, tell us you love us, tell us you hate us, tell us what you ate for dinner. I don't care. But until next time, the South will rise again.
Please don't. Until next time.
That just feels icky coming out of my mouth.
Watch more international action movies.
Yes.
All right. Bye-bye.